Chapter 2. I woke up to my face in a warm, fleshy, horizontal groove, and my arms stretched out above my head. It throbbed, and my wrists were bound together as I tried to pull them apart. Something rough was in my mouth, and I gagged on it as I tried to move. What the hell was going on? Shh, hold on a minute, Uncle. Will you help me? A man's voice was quiet above me as I froze and got shifted around on his lap. I'm face down in someone's lap? Why was I in someone's lap? And why was I tied up? The gag in my mouth loosened as the two men untied it. They pushed me into a sitting position where I could see what was going on. I whimpered as I surveyed my surroundings. 5 men in bloodied armor stared at me wide-eyed as we sat facing each other on rough wooden boards inside a cold metal cage. A cold metal cage that was moving. A wagon. Outside the cage, 2 men sat with their backs to us, urging a couple of horses in front up the incline of the mountain that towered above us on one side and kept them from slipping off the path and into the valley on the other side. In front of me, my hands were tied, and instead of my normal winter gear, I wore a thick but worn and faded jacket over my torso and arms. My jeans were stiff and cold, barely keeping the wind from chilling me further. The young man, whose lap I'd been face down in, studied me for a moment and whispered, "What's your name?" His wrists were still bound, and I wondered how he'd been able to get my gag off. He seemed familiar, but I couldn't remember from where. A strange sense of safety and trust emanated from him as he sat there. His gaze wasn't uncomfortable or leering, and I got the impression he was just as curious about me as I was about him. He was built burly, like a wrestler or football player, seemingly unfazed by the bitter cold weather around us, with long brown hair tied in the back. He also had a neatly trimmed facial hair where most guys I knew were clean-shaven. Either way, it was a good look on him, and I bit the inside of my lip to keep from smiling. Now wasn't the time to go soft over an attractive stranger. Instead, I focused on my surroundings and on his question. Both my curiosity and nervousness grew as I tried to figure out what had happened. Ina? I leaned back, but that made me lean into another man on my right. He grumbled and glared at me out of the one eye that wasn't bruised and swollen shut. I stiffened up, back into my sitting position, trying to suppress or at least hide the panic that swelled up inside of me. This scene was uncomfortably familiar, despite the young man in front of me, but I couldn't figure out why. You know what? The uncle of the young man also spoke in a soft tone, gesturing to the 2 cart drivers in front of us with his bound hands. Is that your full name? No. I kept my voice quiet as well. It's just what I go by. Why do you want to know my full name? The younger man's uncle replied, You look an awful lot like a dear friend of ours. He always talked about having a daughter, but most of us thought it was just a story. Then you show up. I stared at the old man, trying to gauge his intentions. I hated giving out my full name. Maya Ingmar Svanung. It's a weird name, I know. The uncle grinned, revealing a mouth full of crooked teeth. No, it's a fine name, and it means our friend wasn't a liar. He turned to the young man sitting next to me. Following his gaze, I saw that the young man was grinning at me. So you're the new Thane of Svartån, he said. No. My heart stopped for a moment as I stared at him. This wasn't real. This had to be a dream. I was dreaming about Loishara again. That was it. I couldn't be inside a video game. I tried to remember what had brought me here. Nothing. My last memory was of being in my room with Maddie. Maddie? Where the hell was Maddie? Where the hell was I? There was laughter behind me. I turned to see a dark-haired man with a thick, bushy beard smirking at me, just like my mother. The sides of his head were shaven, but the top was braided or matted, with 2 bauble-decorated strands framing his bloodied and scarred face. His stare unnerved me. I think you may have terrified her, Haldrick. The young man whose lap I'd woken up in, Haldrick, glared at the man as I stared between the 2. She'll be fine, Gustav. Gustav's smirks turned into a scowl. It won't matter. We're all dead anyway, or we will be soon. I turned back to Haldrick in alarm. He shook his head. We can still call in the dragons. Looking back to see his reaction, it surprised me to see Gustav's expression darken. There's only 5 of us here, and her. He growled and gestured to me, and she's not even a real Thane. Not yet, anyway. If she's Ingmar's heir, that is. Haldrick's uncle cleared his throat and leaned forward to stare unblinkingly at Gustav. We don't need all the Thanes to call for a dragon's aid. It's just easier that way. I'm surprised you don't clamor for rescue, unless you're expecting someone else. Gustav scowled, but said nothing, instead turning his attention to the road behind us. The man behind me groaned again. What are the chances we'll survive this, Haldrick? They slaughtered almost all of my men today, and if the High King is dead... Haldrick turned back to me. Are you willing to help us? He gestured to the rest of the group. Us. Summon a dragon. I have no idea what to do. My voice came out sounding smaller than even I expected. You just have to get the soldiers' attention once we stop. How you do it, I don't care. I didn't want to die, not in my actual life or in this video game dream world, so I nodded. Haldrick focused on the others and took a deep breath. You all still with me? 3 of the men bowed their heads in agreement, and after a moment, Gustav huffed and bobbed his head as well. The caged wagon bumped along a rocky road, making a bit of straw fall out. I crinkled my nose at the pungent smell around me, wondering if it came from the men or something else. The lands below us were snowy, barren, and rocky, while pine trees towered from the side of the mountain above us, just like in a real-life version of Loishara. I needed to find a familiar landmark from the games. No luck. Haldrick's conversation with me played out almost identical to the new game's introduction. I twisted around again to see a small valley beneath us. Smoke rose from it, but that wasn't necessarily a good sign. A village might be down there with people tending to their everyday lives, or it could be burning. The Bloodnar won't make this easy on us, will they? I turned around to see Haldrick leaning toward me. He shifted so his pant leg and mine touched. Much to my surprise, he was still warm despite the weather. Am I really in Loishara? I whispered. I still believe this was a dream, but it felt different. I never felt cold or other physical sensations in my dreams. Your father told you of this place before he returned here? I shook my head. No, my friend Maddie. Her father Maid told her stories about Loishara and its history. She'd share them with me. So I'm not sure if this is a dream, because this is the type of dream I would have. Haldrick nodded. I don't believe this is a dream. This world seems real to me. It seemed real to me, too. Almost too real. I had wished for Loishara to be real, but I hadn't expected to fall into the game scenario. I closed my eyes and tried to imagine the rope around my wrists disappearing. Then I pulled my wrists apart. Nothing. What are you trying to do? I'm an idiot. Sometimes I can manipulate my dreams. I figured if this was a dream, I could make the ropes disappear. Haldrick laughed. I wish it was that easy. I stared at the ropes around my wrists. This wasn't a dream. The thought hit me hard and my throat tightened as I squeaked out. Are we gonna die? Not if I can help it. He hesitated. But they've already killed the High King and his family, including all the Aethelings, his heirs. And he paused as he looked up at me from his hands. If they execute us Thanes, Loishara won't have anyone to protect it, save the dragons. Dragons. I turned to him as the thought sunk in. Like real, fire-breathing, screeching dragons? I thought back to my dream and the games. Haldrick frowned. Do they not have dragons in... He faced his uncle. Keldon, where did my father and Ingmar go again? Someplace far to go? In the north? The uncle nodded. That's what your father said, before he left. A snowy flat place is what Ingmar reported when he came back, though your father never went to Fartigo. Ingmar said he went west, to a sea castle. I narrowed my eyes in confusion. Fartigo? Haldrick's uncle continued. It is a city in your land, I suppose. Your father, Ingmar, told us it was in the ancient land of the Dagoda. Skilled warriors, horsemen and archers, but foreigners wielding powerful weapons ran them out. He sighed, the wrinkles around his eyes making him look ancient. Much like the Bloodnar are doing here. I gasped once I realized what they were talking about. It's not Fartigo. It's Fargo, North Dakota, where I was born and raised. But there aren't any sea castles near us. North Dakota is landlocked. The Dakota Sioux were fierce warriors, but yeah, foreigners took over. I didn't mention that the foreigners resembled people from Loishara more than not. Haldrick sighed. It's too bad you don't know where the sea castle is. If you did, I'd go there and see what the allure was, to make my father abandon his people and spend his last years there. His uncle shook his head. Don't dwell on the past, Haldrick. Your father was not happy here, not after your mother's death, even with the dragons at his side. Haldrick leaned back against the bars of the wagon and exhaled. His breath materialized as soon as it hit the surrounding air. I suppose you're right. Not that it matters now. He turned his head as a small camp came into view. The wind whipped the bright-colored flags atop the tents. I could make out the image of a garish but familiar red and yellow sun on each one. A Bloodnar war camp. The ruthless bad guys from the games were now real. My chest tightened and my stomach churned as I wondered whether they were as brutal as the games made them out to be. You ready? I hesitated to answer. I wasn't a warrior, but this was real. I wouldn't respawn or wake up if I died here. I guess? Haldrick smiled grimly. Just keep the soldiers' attention. Bite them, swear at them, whatever. We'll take care of the rest. As soon as the cart stopped, my panic threatened to overwhelm me as my heart raced and I grew lightheaded, trying to think of what to do once they dragged me out of the cart. How would I cause a distraction? Was I going to make things worse? I struggled to push away the looming threat of death and failure as two of the soldiers chuckled at me crudely, and others removed the men from the wagon. They weren't from my quote-unquote world, but the gestures were similar enough. As I lurched off the cart, one soldier grabbed my arm and breast. It still ached from where Robert had last hit me a few days prior to all of this, and indignation rose inside my chest. Pardon me, pretty little thing. The soldier chuckled and grabbed my chin, pulling my face too close for comfort. He sounded like Robert, and my insides curled up with anger. Without thinking, I pulled back and jabbed at him in the throat with my elbow. Don't touch me like that. My heart started racing as he tumbled backward. Everyone's attention focused on me as I struggled to pull away. I hated being the center of attention, but this was me causing a scene. Another soldier took me by the arm and squeezed my butt with his free hand, causing me to gasp in pain. Touch you like what? All you Loisharans be whores. Spread 'em high, spread 'em wide. His friends laughed harder. I twisted around and stepped back before swinging my hands at him. He dodged them and smirked, entertained by my antics. My fury at him and at the fact that I was in a very uncomfortable situation fueled me. Shut up! I kicked him in the stomach and wobbled back. I wasn't strong enough to knock him down, but he stumbled back a few paces and into a fellow soldier. You filthy wench! He lunged at me, and I stepped aside, raising my arms again and clipping him on the chin. He dropped to his backside as someone else seized me and twisted me around to face him. Egged on by the adrenaline coursing through my body and my ability to hold my own against these soldiers, I spat on the next man without a second thought. As I stared at him, though, his attire gave away his position as a leader among the Bloodnar soldiers, and I froze. Enough! Spit dribbled down his nose and face as the man's grasp on my arm tightened until it was painful. You can be the first to perish. I plan to give that honor to your friend Dragon Breath, but I'll be taking all your heads to my king myself anyway, so you can die first. He kicked me with the flat of his boot, and I stumbled to my knees next to a low square stone, stained dark with dried blood. A nearby soldier yanked me around, arranging my head on the stone so that my neck was in the middle, facing the other things. A humming sound started from where they stood. I writhed in vain as a soldier pressed my head into the stone harder. Hot tears rolled across my face, and I hoped that I had bought Haldrick enough time. A hand grasped my head beneath my jawbone, pressing on old bruises my mother had given me and pulling it up to reveal my neck. The soldier behind me rasped out with a deep, gravelly voice. Looks like we weren't the only ones after your throat. I froze as I saw the large, muscular executioner walk out from a nearby tent, surveying us prisoners. A moment passed before he checked his blade. He shifted to me, grinning with a mouth near void of teeth, and walked behind me and out of sight. My gut churned with fear as soon as I lost sight of him. I'm going to die. My mind went blind with panic as I jerked against the soldier's grasp again, and my sight blurred with tears. Then the things began to chant. It was a song I knew, a plea to Teneleth. The soldiers began murmuring, grabbing for their swords. The Thanes ignored them. Even the soldier holding my head loosened his grip. Pulled in by the sound, I started singing along, keeping in tune with them and speaking the words as the sound grew louder and louder. Silence! Silence the men! The commander pulled out his blade and pointed it at Haldrick's throat. Both the soldier holding me down and the executioner ran toward the Thanes. Then the first screech came. Our song finished, and I heard Haldrick's voice above the ensuing fray. Cover your ears, Ina! With no one holding me to the stone, I twisted off of it and onto my back. I was faster now than I was in the game, but despite plugging my ears the best I could, I heard a muffled but louder screech as a massive, familiar-looking dragon flew overhead. I watched as it took a breath above us, and I braced for the next screech. The ground shook from the sound as I shut my eyes, curling up as tight as I could. Then silence before a feminine voice spoke. "Welcome home, little one." The surrounding noises returned, this time with screaming and gurgling. I fought the urge to heave from the vibrations of the screeching, and held my breath until everything was silent. Silent except for the plodding of feet in my direction. "Keep your eyes closed, Ina." Haldrick sounded calmer now, but I did as he said until he stood me up and started slicing the ropes from my wrists. I opened one eye to catch him grinning. "Hearing a dragon's war cry can be life-altering. How did you recognize the summoning song?" I stared at the surrounding scene, just now seeing the carnage. All the blood in our soldiers lay dead despite no outward injuries, except for blood dripping from various orifices. However, the air above their bodies shimmered unnaturally. The urge to vomit came quick and violent. Haldrick turned me to the side as I began dry heaving. I was shaking and weak by the time it stopped. "Told you to keep your eyes closed." His voice was soft, his words more of a statement of fact than a chastisement. He guided me to where the other men stood, cutting the ropes off of each other's wrists. Haldrick's uncle smiled at me. "You are your father's daughter, for sure, and you sang the summoning song perfectly. Did your father teach it to you as a child? I believe you singing it brought the dragon to our aid more quickly." I groaned as I tried to keep my balance, not having the energy to explain the real reason I could sing the song. Haldrick tightened his arm around my shoulders and said, "I need to find Hrimfrax and determine if any of the horses here are worth taking." He steered me towards another young man who had gathered up 6 agitated horses, trying to soothe them. Once he had calmed them enough, he turned to us and smiled. "We're lucky. These are war horses, and good ones too. They were just jittery." Hrimfax shrugged. Any animal would be around dragons, but we'll get them home without delay. He then cocked his head and stared at me, as if gauging me, before glancing back at Haldrick. "Does she know how to ride?" I shook my head, and Haldrick replied, "Even if she could, I think she'll need a hot meal and some rest before riding. Today's been eventful for her. It's been memorable for all of us." Hrimfax grabbed the reins of 2 of the stallions, guiding them over to Haldrick, who tied one to another. Why weren't the horses affected by the dragon's war cry? Despite feeling weak, my curiosity prevailed. Hrimfax grinned. "Legend has it that horses and dragons are related, so while they get jittery, they have no ill effects from the dragons." He nuzzled one horse, and it seemed to return the sentiment. "Which makes me happy. I can't bear to see horses suffer. They're smart animals, you know." Haldrick put his hand on my shoulder, and I let him help me up onto one of the horses. He turned to Hrimfax and said, "Thank you, cousin. Your gift with horses has always been an asset." Hrimfax shrugged again and said, "You could say the same for your gift. Either way, are you 2 headed back to Andrader? Or—" Haldrick shook his head as he got up on the horse behind me and wrapped a large horse blanket around the 2 of us. "Svartån. Ina needs to visit her Thanelands sooner rather than later." I twisted around wide-eyed as Haldrick's cousin gawked at us and then turned to him. "So the rumors were true?" Haldrick nodded. "Yes, and now it is time for Ina to take her father's place." As we headed out, my mind roiled with the implications of Haldrick's comments. My dad was from this place, a place very much not Earth, and Haldrick made it sound like he was dead now. As much as I wanted to start spitting out questions, my tongue was too heavy to even make a sound. Plus, I still felt awkward and uncomfortable sitting so close to Haldrick. We were pushed together, my back to his chest, and as much as I tried to sit stiff and with space between us, I quickly realized that was impossible. I was weak as it was, and sitting forward took too much energy. It also left me painfully exposed to the weather. Even by North Dakota standards, the weather here was downright bitter, and I wasn't wearing my typical heavy winter gear. I pushed aside my discomfort at being so close to someone I just met and tried to think of a neutral question, something that wouldn't cause me to vomit out all of the questions in my head at once. "How long until we reach Svartån?" I asked as we navigated up a gentle hill and between tall pine trees. I ducked my head closer to Haldrick's to keep my face from getting swatted by low-hanging branches. We had strayed away from the main path while still paralleling it, and the bit of sunlight that peeked through the clouds gave the surrounding woods a serene yet ominous feeling. "It's not yet midday, so barring any foul weather or errant soldiers, we should reach the border with Svartån by tonight. and the Thane's estate, Stagningdom, in 2 days' time. We're in Svartån now, and there's a respectable inn just beyond the border with Svartån that we can stop at tonight. Thank you. I did my best to stay stable on the horse and not lean into Haldrick, but between nearly being beheaded, vomiting, and freezing to death, exhaustion crept into every bone, and I succumbed to slumping against him. We continued through the dense fir forest for a while, the only sounds coming from our horses and the wildlife, before he asked, "So, how long was your father around after you were born, if I may ask? Did you have time to know him?" I hesitated, wondering how much I wanted to tell him. I was young when he left. 5, maybe? I have a few memories of him reading stories to me. I paused again. If this was really the Loishara of the video games, then the stories I remembered would be common knowledge, right? Or at least the characters? About 2 warriors, Bjornulf and Freya. Haldrick laughed. Hot air hit my neck and made the hair on it stand up. So he read some of the epics to you. What else did he teach you about Loishara? Not much. I didn't really learn about Loishara from him, except for those stories. He had a few weird knickknacks that he gave me, though, like... My chest squeezed tight as I remembered the book that my dad had given me as a child, full of drawings like the ones I saw later in the Loisharan video games. My mother had ripped it up and thrown it in the trash during one of her rages soon after Maddie's arrival. The memory still hurt, so I didn't like to think about it, or the book, too much. But now I wondered. What? Nothing, just a memory, about the stories he'd tell me. So, who was he here? I asked. He was a warrior, one of the best in all of Loishara. You'd need to talk to Alatar about that side of him, the Heir of Heidrunfoss. He trained both of us in that regard. I hope she survived the battle. He sighed. I hope all the other Thanes survive the battle as well. Otherwise, Loishara will still be in a world of hurt. I stayed silent as I struggled to imagine my dad being a warrior, perhaps because my memories were mostly of my mother, yelling at him and him never lashing back. Warriors were aggressive, but the father I remembered wasn't. My thoughts returned to the gift that reminded me most of him. My dragonstone, the one that had broken just before I woke up here. What are you thinking about? My father being a warrior, and the gift he gave me before he left. He called it a dragonstone, told me it was special. My mind raced as I tried to connect the dots, but the harder I tried, the harder it was to concentrate. If it really was a dragonstone, it was special, and that was likely how you got here. But I wonder how your father got one. Those are difficult to get. I leaned back into Haldrick's shoulder as my head swam, and my mind switched to the present with a heavy realization. All the questions I'd been trying to keep from bubbling pushed to the forefront of my mind. So if I'm here, and here isn't a dream, and I'm the new Thane of Svartån, that means my father is actually truly dead now, isn't he? Part of my dream from the night before started coming back into full force, in particular the part where he lay dying, holding his pendant in his hand and calling out my name. Haldrick nodded, his face beside mine, his beard brushing up and down against the side of my face. I sat up as tears formed in my eyes. Grief and anxiety washed over me, making my head swim even more as I fought the desire to hide. What am I going to do? I tried to steady my voice. Are the people of Svartån going to expect me to be some amazing warrior like my father when we get there? No. For now, what they need is a leader. Someone who will protect Svartån. I hope the Bloodnar haven't reached it or Andradr yet, but with the defeat at Dradayurt, they may soon be there. Plus, Svartån and my Thanelands have another enemy, the Asilis elves, to the north. And even before Dradayurt, there were reports of their ships coming within sight of our coasts. I shuddered, both at the idea of the Asilis and at leading people. How was I supposed to be the Thane of Svartån when I had no idea how to be in charge of anyone? I had never led a club or a team or a group project. I had avoided the spotlight. My mother's voice popped into my head, reminding me of how I could never be responsible for anything or anyone. Haldrick squeezed me tight, and I gasped in surprise. He quickly released me from the hug as soon as I did. However, before I return to Andradr, I would like to help you learn how to be a Thane, as your father did for me. I turned back to look at him and saw that he wore a somber grin while watching the surrounding forest. It's a tradition here. Thaneirs spend a few years under the instruction of another Thane. We'd have to shorten your training, but that's not unheard of. Your father trained me, and it would honor me to do it for you. We both seem to have some things in common. He stopped his vigil to look at me. Like absent fathers? The words popped out of my mouth before I could stop them. I winced and turned away from his gaze. It sounded like that was a sensitive topic back in the wagon. Haldrick paused, an awkward silence settling between us, leaving just the sounds of the horses in the forest. After what felt like an eternity, he said, Keldon, my uncle, was right. My father wasn't happy after my mother's death. That's my guess why he took your father's offer to explore. I have a large family of aunts, uncles, cousins, and so on. I'm related to half the Thanes in Loishara, so it wasn't like he was abandoning me. But he was, like my father did me. My voice came out harder than I intended. Your father didn't abandon you. He brought my father home after his death. And years later, as he was training me, he mentioned that he planned to go back if the High King had not demanded he stay when the Bloodnar began pushing into Loishara. Goodness knows he talked about you all the time. He paused again. By the way, is the first day of May your actual birthday? I stared at him for a moment and nodded. Yes, why? May 1st was a high holiday in Svartån when your father was Thane. All those who swore fealty to him had the day off from any responsibilities. When he was actually in Svartån, the people were very fond of him. Since his celebration coincided with Bolden, many other things thought he just celebrated it more than usual. Bolden? Among the farmers and peasants here in Loishara, they consider it the first day of summer, despite being 6 weeks before the solstice. Bolden is also the day that the first High King, Bjornolf, fought and defeated Ryluth. They usually hold celebrations in the evening and at night. Bonfires, singing, and dancing, but always after the day's work. Your father, however, would give the entire day off, from sunrise to sunrise, and he said it was his way of celebrating his Inca. My heart stopped for a moment, and I all of a sudden felt very warm under the blanket. I turned around to hide my reaction from Haldrick. Inca had been my father's nickname for me as a child. No one knew the nickname except him and me. Any doubt that I may have had was now gone, but a bitter anger filled its place. I loved my dad, but I hated that he had left me with my mother. Was there ever a time when the Bloodnar weren't attacking? In over 10 years, he could have said, Hey, I need to grab my heir. Be right back. If he knew how to get to Fargo and back, he could have, right? The Bloodnar have been battling us since before your father's return, and as a Thane, you can't exactly tell the High King that you're taking a break from whatever he commanded you to do. I doubt your father ever wanted to leave you. If he could have returned for you without incurring High King Kale's wrath, he would have. Haldrick rubbed my shoulder consolingly. His last words were about you. The image of the man who resembled my dad in my dream came back to mind. Had that actually been my dad? Anger and grief mixed inside my chest. And now he's dead, and I'm here, in a world I barely knew existed. I snapped. I knew I had reached my breaking point when tears streamed down my face. The only saving grace to the whole situation was that Haldrick couldn't see me crying. You aren't alone, or at least you won't be. You are a Thane of Loishara, and Ingmar Svanang's daughter. Your subjects will expect much of you, but there will be people around to help. Other Thanes and your Jessiths, other high-ranking warriors from various towns in Svartån, sworn to obey you as a Thane, and those who serve your father as his estate, Stagnadum. I took a deep breath. Can I trust them, though? I thought back to the smirking Thane, Gustav, in the wagon. Despite only meeting him briefly, there was something off about him. You can trust me. I owe too much to your father to do anything but help you. And there are others like Hrimfax, Alatar, and my uncles that I would trust my life with. As for the rest, hopefully. I won't speak ill of our fellow Thanes, but I believe, and your father did as well, that if we were more unified, we wouldn't be having such a troublesome time with the Bloodnar. I stayed quiet as more questions swirled in my head and more worries weighed me down. There was little I could do to fix any of those things in my current state. Giving in to my exhaustion once and for all, I leaned back onto Haldrick's shoulder and closed my eyes, hoping that things would get better once I opened them again.